One thing that's very unique and characteristic of Zen is the simplicity of the practice and of the teachings. You know, we say that Zen, from the beginning, Zen was described as the practice, or the form of the Dharma beyond words and letters. Right? So it's not a scholarly tradition at all, although there's a lot of great teachings that we can study in depth. But it's quite expressly a non-scholarly tradition. It's a participatory, mystical tradition of engagement with true self. And we tend to get distracted and up in our heads around the words. So, and that's not where the access to true nature is through that. It can be illuminating in certain ways, but we tend to take that as the path in a lot of way to understanding. But the Zen path to understanding is participatory. And that means simplicity, and that means this ordinary human experience is our doorway into understanding our deepest nature. So today I want to appreciate one of the simple qualities that we talk about in Zen, which is harmony. So this is the harmony of no mind that I'll appreciate today, and some of the teachings on that. So been inspired by selections from Suzuki Roshi's recent compilation, Becoming Yourself, and these paragraphs on the spirit of Zen ethics inspired me today. This chapter is entitled "There's Only One Way for You to Go," and he's talking about the precepts, but where he brings it to really stimulated me. So I want to share this and then kind of launch off. If you really want to know what precepts are, you should concentrate on what you do. Okay. You know, right here, just to start off, when we think about precepts, we think about kind of concepts and codes of behavior and codes of ethics. So we want to, hear what the guidelines are and then understand them and then follow them. So there's a lot of that kind of intellectual understanding of the precepts. And he kind of like just orients us just a bit differently right into our behavior and how we feel when we're acting. If you really want to know what precepts are, you should concentrate on what you do. You don't even need to think about precepts. Then naturally you will find your own way. If you take a trip from San Francisco to Los Angeles every day, then you don't have to think so much about the way to get to Los Angeles. The only thing to think about is how to get to Los Angeles without having an accident. That's the point, not the precepts, but how to be concentrated in each moment, driving from San Francisco to Los Angeles. So prior, he said, precepts show you the way before you go. When you drive somewhere, you follow the signs, but when you decide to drive a car from San Francisco to Los Angeles, you follow the signs, and then the sign makes sense. So we put an emphasis on the actual practice of Zazen or Shikantaza, on how to be concentrated on what we do, moment after moment. Shikantaza is to live in each moment, so you can apply Shikantaza in your everyday life. The point is to be concentrated on what you do in its true sense, without seeking for anything inside or outside. It is to do everything in harmony with your surroundings. When you ignore your actual activity, thinking about something else, that is not real practice. The point is to be concentrated in what you do in its true sense, without seeking for anything inside or outside. It is to do everything in harmony with your surroundings. Such a nice, clear, simple expression of our practice, right there. Not only our practice, but following the precepts. This is what to do. Concentrate on what you're doing and being in harmony with your surroundings. So So I want to appreciate this, a little bit more. What is this harmony? Right? So it's not agreement. It's not just simply, agreeing with another person or with a proposition. It's holding a mind that is not clinging to or resisting reality. That's a harmonious mind. It's flowing with conditions without losing clarity, like water moving around rocks. It's this harmony. Not that we're of like mind about something. It's deeper than that. It's fuller than that. It's more immediate than that. This mind that is in intimate participation with reality. We can call this no mind. This harmonious mind is no mind. The Zen master Ryokan, you might have heard of, he's a famous Japanese Zen master from several centuries ago. And he was a poet and a rogue, never took over a formal teaching position in a monastery, lived in a hut in poverty, for his later life, He composed the poem, which many of you are, I'm sure, familiar with. Let's see, I didn't copy it down here, and see if I can remember it. It's the something like the moon in the window. The thief left it behind. That one. And it comes from a real event where a thief broke into his hut. He lived in a hovel, basically out in the woods. He didn't have much of anything, but this guy broke in, and I believe Ryokan came upon him while he was in there, and he gave him, I think he might have given him some clothing and whatever food he had, actually, and then he left, and then he said, even after giving him that, he said, oh, the moon. The moon is still here. Yeah. So this is another poem from Ryokan. With no mind, flowers lure the butterfly. With no mind, the butterfly visits the blossoms. Yet, when flowers bloom, the butterfly comes. When the butterfly comes, the flowers bloom. We'll come back to this a little later. But what a beautiful, evocative, and almost multi-dimensional evocation of harmony in this poem. Harmony of the butterfly and flower. Okay. Well, let's talk about disharmony for a bit to appreciate, the opposite of it. Disharmony would be created by a mind that resists or clings to reality. Right? Clings to some aspect of reality or resists some aspect of reality. Disharmony is created right there, right? So we can see, even regardless of conditions, we create a lot of disharmony within ourselves, all by ourselves. We can do this. We don't need challenging people, challenging circumstances to be the source of our disharmony. Right here, by clinging to or resisting reality, we're creating disharmony within our own consciousness, within our own big mind. Okay? And this is dukkha, right here. This is what Buddha meant by dukkha. Dukkha, often translated suffering, translated as insufficiency, is also translated by some of my Dharma brothers as out of joint. Out of joint. So we can see that this is the fundamental cause of, the fundamental quality of human nature, which is problematic, you could say. the disharmony created when we resist or cling to reality. And disharmony emerges there. And how do we do it? It's usually the clinging and it's the resistance, but it's ideas around that too. Okay? In the immediate sense, we could be pushing away an unpleasant feeling, or craving a feeling, in the moment. But oftentimes our resistances and our cravings are, in a sense, structured by our ideas about reality. We feel that something shouldn't be happening, that it's bad. A person shouldn't be saying something or doing something. Right? So it's that idea and that judgment that introduces the disharmony. This is the Buddha's parable of the second arrow. Right? It's not our experience that's the problem, it's our reaction to our experience. That's the problem. It's the layers of reaction to our immediate experience that create our problems. Right. So now let's come back to harmony. Right? Well, let's for a moment just maybe feel into that sense of disharmony. Can you contact that feeling? Close your eyes and notice perhaps where you might be disharmonious right now. Notice how you are commonly disharmonious. When you wake up, is your mind racing around the things you need to get done? Just kind of evoke the felt sense, the difference between a harmonious quality within yourself versus a disharmonious quality. One of the beautiful and pleasant fruits of doing extended meditation practice, like we'll be doing on Monday, is this feeling of harmony that develops within the body-mind. And those of you who've sat for a while, you know this. In fact, it's what brings you back. It can be addictive. It's just really beautiful, wonderful. And harmony is the nice word because it's all included, isn't it? All the feelings are included. See, this is a harmony that it includes all feelings. It doesn't have to be beautiful or pleasant, all right? In fact, it includes unpleasant feelings and distressful feelings and edgy thoughts and scary feelings. All of it is included. But it's got a great grounding to it because everything is included. Yeah, it's as if the whole room or the whole center or the whole world even is included within whatever is going on within you. That's the level and the vastness of the harmony that we cultivate here. Right? You fully accept everything, you fully include everything, and then you let it all sing together within your being. And from this grounded place of harmony, wherever you move your mind out to, it can be included in that. So you bring in your work, sitting at retreat, and you bring your work into your orbit of your consciousness, of your mind, And then that harmonizes with your being. You bring your relationship to mind, and then that harmonizes with your being. You've cultivated this quality of mind that can reach out and bring in other aspects of your life, other aspects of the world, right? And that can harmonize and join the harmony that you've cultivated within. So there's this resonance, there's this coherence. Okay. So this is really important, and I'd like to offer you as a practice to regularly check in on how harmonious and coherent your internal state is. Okay? If you think you're going to harmonize with the outside world and be okay with it and practice with it without this inner coherence, it's not going to work. It all comes from the inner coherence. That's why we base it on this very protected and individual and quiet and personal inward practice that we have here. We have to create that harmonious field within. And it is difficult to do that when we're out in activity. You see? Cultivate from that, and then we carry that out, that field. We can meet anything when we have that internal coherence. Okay? But when we start to practice, it can be very fragile. It can crash, dissipate quickly. But the more we practice and the more deep work we do, we cultivate that ability to re-equilibrate to this internal coherent system quite quickly. So I'll offer that as a noticing for you at any time through your day. How internally harmonic is harmonious. Yeah, harmonious. How are you? Is there a struggle on the inside? Is there a pushing or a pulling or a spinning or a looping? Okay. Now all those things, I'm saying if those things are manifesting, then embrace them and include them and establish that ground, that harmonic ground with those. I read something a few years ago where they said they were doing studies. I'm not sure exactly how they did it, but we think about listening to great music, thinking like a great orchestral piece, and you can just almost go into a mystical state, right? Just be completely in the zone, completely harmonized, in a state of deep, almost samadhi consciousness, really connected. Well, they found that you can go into that state, people go into that state when it's really cacophonous and discordant music as well. Like really crazy creative jazz music, or like punk rock, really loud, crazy discordant punk rock music. I'm thinking these things, we can go into those states with that music as well. They've shown that to be the case, and I don't know if anybody's a fan of, I don't know, like Schoenberg 12-tone music and very discordant classical music, or punk rock and those types of discordant genres. But you probably, maybe in discussion you can share, go into very deep states of oneness within those, right? So that's what I'm talking about, that harmonic resonance that includes discord and such. It's not all beautiful melody. So Suzuki Roshi said, the point is to be concentrated on what you do in its true sense, without seeking for anything inside or outside. That's an interesting phrase, to be concentrated on what you're doing in its true sense. Okay, so I understand that to be kind of in true relation with your surroundings, right? Now he says to be concentrated on what you do. Okay, not on what you think, well, not on what you believe. Concentrated on what you do. That's our practice. We do. We sit, we meditate, we clean the dishes, we rake the ground, we fix the pipe, we make the meal. Okay, we're always doing it in this way. So shikan taza is to just do whatever it is you're doing. Shikan taza is just sitting. Shikan ta dishes, shikan ta walking, shikan ta raking, shikan ta speaking. That's true. That's in the true sense. Okay, because it isn't corrupted by your ideas about it. It isn't interrupted by your resistances to it. It isn't complicated by your agenda for it. In its true sense. Okay, the true sense of what you're doing. This is becoming intimate with yourself. To become intimate with yourself. What you are doing. Any moment. Yeah. So in a way, how could anybody or anything pull you away from your practice? You're always you. You're right here. Doing something. So you do it. You do it completely. Right now, you're sitting and listening. And you're sitting and listening completely. That's your practice. That's your life. I'm up here talking. So my practice is to just talk. So it's very simple. It's very simple. We wash the dishes to clean the dishes. We talk with friends to connect with them. We work to earn a living. Perhaps to create something valuable for others. We don't have to have big plans or objectives or agendas, for any of it. Even the precepts, going back to how I started, shouldn't be looked at as kind of a set of rules. It's actually more a set of signs. It's a sign pointing you to the way to go where you want to go, to do what you want to do, what your aspiration is. And then, once you know how to drive from San Francisco to LA, you don't need the signs anymore, right? So once you know how to live wholesomely, then you don't need the precepts anymore as written, guidelines. Okay, and I think this is true. We use them as signs pointing the way towards wholesome living, and this word wholesome is one that comes up in the way that I talk about the precepts and in the way my lineage talks about the precepts. People hear precepts and they think good and bad and, dharma and not dharma, some opposition like this, okay? But really the best word that I like the best when talking about the precepts is wholesome. It's about living wholesomely. And in our Fusatsu ceremony, that word comes in, which we did a few weeks ago, with our renewal of the vow ceremony. That word comes in. Wholesome. It points the way towards wholesome living. Okay. So wholesome and harmony are very related. Right? The unity of all aspects of our life, including others. Right? Not separate from others. It isn't just an individualistic wholesomeness. It's wholesomeness in the context of our life with others, as our harmony is the harmony with others and with the world. So I was starting to talk about how it starts with that internal harmonization, and that's, I think, important and essential, but then it does reach out to harmonize with other beings and other situations. So now I want to come back to the butterfly poem from Ryokan. With no mind, flowers lure the butterfly. With no mind, the butterfly visits the blossoms. Yet, when flowers bloom, the butterfly comes. When the butterfly comes, the flowers bloom. Here's the harmony. Here's the harmony. And it isn't this harmony that's just everything, everywhere, all at once is naturally harmonious. Because there is that perfection of just everything being exactly as it is and perfect right now. But there's also something beautifully harmonious about the way one thing interacts with and invites and responds to another thing. Right? You could say that, we say melody is across time and harmony is in the moment, but this is harmonious through time. And the last line, I think, is the most powerful here. When the butterfly comes, the flowers bloom, because our normal kind of logical, conceptual way of thinking is that the flower blooms and then the butterfly comes, right? That's our standard cause and effect way to look at it. The Rhea comes like, yes, and when the butterfly comes, the flower blooms. Okay, so they're together, they're harmonious. This is two arrows meeting in midair, which is a line from our identity and relative and absolute, that identity right there. In our chant services and in the bows that we do at the end of our practice periods, the doan rings the bell in accord with the officiant's bows. And it's meant to be like this. Okay, it isn't that the bell is cueing the officiant to bow, or the officiant is cueing the doan to ring the bell. It's bing, right at the same time. Now, we have a few doans in the room here, and sometimes that happens, and sometimes it doesn't. And it's, and I'm not saying it's all on you, because it's a harmony between me as the officiant and you as the doan, and all of us to kind of meet that bell right at that moment. And I can feel it. I can feel it when it's co-emergent. And perhaps you can too feel it when it's co-emergent. And that's how it's meant to be. It's lovely. Now, we can't get egotistical about this and say, oh, well, when I'm ready to, draw from the flower, I'll go and me as the butterfly, I'll fly over the flower and it'll blossom. It's not, I'm calling the shots. That's the narcissistic interpretation of the final line. I'm gonna make it happen. No, not at all. It's responsiveness to the field that's present in the field. And I'll conclude with a final haiku from Ryokan that kind of brings this point out. He says, I must go there today. Tomorrow the plum blossoms will scatter. Okay. So he's aware. He's aware of the time. He's aware of the unfolding and the rightness of the time. And he says, I have to go today because they won't be there tomorrow. Okay? And his harmonious action includes a great intimacy with the cycles of nature. Right? Being in tune with the whole world. I guess the final thing I wanted to just mention is to inspire you with what I'm saying here about harmony, to embrace your own spiritual authority, okay? Because it comes from your sense of harmonious action, okay? Only you can feel and assess the harmonious coherence and resonance that you have with your surroundings, you know? I mean, others might be able to detect some things, but you have the deepest view of that and the deepest feeling of that, your resonance and your harmony. So don't get caught up in trying to understand the Dharma conceptually. Don't try to figure it out. You know, my talk last week was about don't try to figure yourself out, so also don't try to figure the Dharma out and then apply it to your life in that way. You know, do it this way. Okay? And also don't rely on others, you know, including me, maybe especially me, to explain the Dharma to you. Okay? You find this quality of harmoniousness within you, and that be your guide. Let that be your guide for action, let that be your guide for practice. Let that be your guide and teacher. And you can be the butterfly approaching the flower. Inviting it to open as it invites you to drink from its nectar. Meet the world like this. Okay, thank you for your attention.